My fearless friends, truly excited with another amazing guest because you know me, I always bring really awesome human beings that give me food for thought and really inspire me. And today's amazing guest is JD Murgolo,
Yep.
all the way from the US, wanting to share with us a bit about his mission. He is really passionate about bringing grace and compassion to our community. And I saw this, as I was telling JD earlier, in his amazing Twitter account because he truly inspires me. And talking about parenthood, JD is a father as well. He is the founder of the mental health ecosystem Fragile Moments. And by the way, this is how I have named today's episode because fragile is a word that I don't hear too often. And one of my questions later on for JD will be, what inspired you to get this amazing name? Because it really sparks light in me in a different way. Besides this, he is also the charismatic host of the podcast, What's Your Story? A storytelling podcast that connects people who are struggling with their mental illness. Don't we all? With strangers who share their lived experience. And a few words about JD's amazing mission. As I said earlier, he wants to bring compassion, another very inspiring word that, yeah, we read about it, we see it online, but do we really know what it means?
Yeah.
Welcome, JD. Such a
Yeah.
pleasure to have you here with us today.
What a welcome that was. I don't know if anybody has spoken that highly of me that's not related to me in a while. So thank you for that.
It's my pleasure. You truly inspire me so much. And please, let's start with this question because I got so curious. What inspired you, JD, to
What
get this
inspired me?
awesome name, Fragile Moments? Again, fragile, not a word you hear about on a
No,
common talk, right? So, what inspired you?
not unless it's on a box of glassware that you're
Oh,
traveling
yeah.
with, right?
I
You're
didn't
right
think
though.
about that. You're right. I
Yeah.
didn't think about that.
But
Yeah.
it is. You're right. It's not a word that you associate to a human being unless they're tiny. Unless they're a newborn. Or even a toddler at that point, but even that by then you're slowly like not as used to hearing that, but it's the case for everything. And I quickly kind of realized with the work that I was doing that that's what your life is comprised of, is moments, right? And some of them are big and some of them are small. Some of them seem meaningless and really are truly meaningful, and truly some of them are just nothing at all. But if you're not paying attention to them and really kind of observing what's happening, and that doesn't mean you have to sit down and journal your entire day and go, okay, well, what did that mean? It's not necessarily that. It's the fact that you have to really kind of soak it in and take in what's happening in a day. And all those moments combined are essentially like glass balls, and you have to be careful with them. You have to be very mindful of what you're doing because they are so fragile. And one moment missed can have a huge ripple effect. And that doesn't mean that something bad's going to happen if you miss, but you might have lost a moment that you really should have just sat and appreciated. Or it could be just as simple as that, or it could be something larger that you weren't really paying attention to, the value of your relationship with your loved one, in each end of the spectrum. You have some version of being fragile, and fragile, again, like I said, it doesn't mean it's necessarily breakable, but it's so fragile in the sense that it's important that we have to pay attention. So my work is centered around that, is really just helping people see every kind of fragile moment they have, from the physical to the mental. Um, and threading it together, stringing it together in a way that they can then find the meaning. And you have an easier time finding your own path at that point versus somebody saying, well, here's here's what you need to drink and eat to feel healthy, or here's what you need to, meditate with and do to make your mind healthy. You get to absorb it now and go, okay, I've figured out what works for me. I've paid attention to my life moments. I know that that's going to work, or I know that that's might be great for somebody else, but it doesn't work for me. And that takes a lot of practice and hard work and somebody to do that with you, I think, not for you. So yeah, it was a long process to get to a very, very simple name, but um, I like watching companies. I do it every morning when I'm driving on the way to bring my kids to school and to and from. You see the big trailers with their names on the side. I'm like, I don't even know what that name means that you do. You just strung together a bunch of very high sounding scientific words, but I guess it worked for you. Or then you see something and you're like, oh man, that was really clever. That has nothing to do with what your sign says that it's, you're heating and air conditioning, but that worked. Like that really makes sense. So it was important for me to really kind of have that blend of both, aha, yeah, I know what he means, and oh, that's what the work means that he's doing with this, the name of this company. So it was a fun process. I like doing that a lot.
Wow, I really can relate to what you said just now. This name really makes me
Yeah,
understand what you're doing. Mental health is indeed fragile. And although we are so powerful as human beings, what a paradigm, right? We are so
yeah, right. We
fragile most
are.
of the times. And the
Yeah.
other, it's wow, this is deep. I did not expect such a great answer. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
also enjoy what you think about storytelling because I know that
Yeah.
we can so relate to seeing
Yeah,
storytelling as the ultimate healing
it
experience.
is.
So, can you please share a bit about your
Yeah.
story?
I and you'll quickly either love it or hate it that I'm like that, but I love to talk. And I see it in my own son already. My daughter is only a year old, talks in her own little way. Um, but I can see it just in how I speak to them and being able to clarify what you say and how you say it and the tone that you say it. So I've always enjoyed do that, telling some kind of story, not necessarily a made up one, but I can remember my parents telling me as I old enough to remember it that they couldn't wait for me to talk when I was a kid, and then when I started, they couldn't wait for me to not. Um, so I enjoy doing it, but what I've honed in and been able to kind of tease out better as I've grown older is not necessarily getting to the point because you do have a lot of details that you might need in a story, but getting to that point, a little bit more cleanly. So I'll give you an example. My son is going to be my forever example for now. He's at that stage where he likes to ask why, and I love that because that means I didn't either explain something right and or he needs to understand what it is. Like he wants that explanation, right? And it's one of many things in parenting that you read. And you're like, oh, like get ready for when they start asking why. It's going to give you a headache. But I look at it in that sense that it's like, okay, here's my opportunity to describe something or explain something, make him feel comfortable, whatever it is. But if I don't do it in a clear and concise way, I know he's going to ask why again. And that's great that he did. But what he's doing, when and you may not even realize it, is telling me, Dad, I don't know what you just said. And as we've started to do, and it's only been maybe 2 months of him, like, and he knows exactly what that why means. Like, it's not like, well, of course, that's a dinosaur. You know why it's a dinosaur. It's made me start to stop, made me like start to realize as he's asking that question before the words come out of my mouth. I'm like, don't take 2 sentences to do this. You really need to pay attention. So I'm clear and I'm concise with it. And I know it worked when he doesn't ask why at the end of it. So it's that right there. That's my reason for enjoying the story is that it does tell a lot about yourself, about the world around you, and just how connected we are to all those experiences, and how connected, but at the same time, we meet those experiences in totally different ways and have a chance to kind of absorb it differently by hearing somebody else's experience with it. Mental health is one of those, just one facets of it. But you don't even have to be talking about the fact that I go through anxiety to hear that in a story, or experience what they're experiencing. So for me, storytelling is not, I need to hear everything. I think that's where we kind of get it wrong sometimes, is that when you hear, oh, I want to hear their story, I need to tell them everything about my life. And you don't. You have to tell what you, for starters, feel comfortable sharing. But you also have to be authentic to yourself when you're telling that story, because you'll never know, right? The person that's listening to that story is never going to know whether you're telling the truth about it or not, but you will. And so whenever I talk to people about sharing their story, I always tell them that, like, you share what you're comfortable with. I'm never going to know. I'm not going to go back and check whether your story is completely honest or not, but you will. When we close off, when we walk away from each other, when we hang up the phone, whatever it is, you have to feel comfortable with whatever you shared, and put out in the world. Um, versus like, you can feel the people that are digging for, well, can you explain that more? You may not want to, and that's not fair to the person, and that's not fair to the story. That might be just part of that story that they took them years to say just this, seemingly general statement about the fact that, I don't know, go back to anxiety, because this is an example that, they're talking about the fact that it was hard for them to sit in a restaurant and feel comfortable being in a restaurant with a friend and having all these people around them, and not feeling totally anxious. And that might have taken them years for them to say that part out loud. So it'd be unfair to somebody to say, well, can you explain what that anxiety felt like? Who knows, they might be able to tell you that, but they might also look at that and go, there's their anxiety like kicking in, because now they have to think about how to explain it to you, and they're putting themselves in that situation that is causing them that. So to me, that's a very small example, and there's millions of them, as to why you just have to let the story, as you started at the beginning, you just talk, um, and see what falls out, and be okay with what comes out, because there's something that's going to connect you to their story, whether you want more or not.
I feel the same way. And what I truly appreciate is you mentioned how basically present you get to be in your amazing children's presence.
Yeah,
So, this is such a gift, right? You need to be really mindful of
you
what you're
do.
going to tell to tell them. And I wanted to ask you, how do you keep yourself present when you're not with them? Do you have any techniques that you put in practice?
You mean when I'm like when I'm not around my kids at all, like, at the end of a day, or this kind of
Yeah.
moment? I don't have anything major. I think what I realized, like, early on, is that I can't try and cram in everything that I'd like to do, and I think that's where a lot of parents kind of go backwards. That it's, or where you see all the jokes about my kid's not falling asleep on time, or you find the tricks that, like, if your kid's not finishing their meal, try this. That's where all those come in, is when the parent is like trying to do, they want their life that they had
Yeah.
before, and you don't get that, and that's okay. It's not that you're, and you could resent your child for that. You don't want to do that, so you really have to pause. And I'm guilty of doing the same thing, so I'm certainly not perfect. But I think that's something that I catch very, very quickly now, is that, we'll take sleep, for instance, that it used to be that, oh my gosh, like, I need you to go to bed like now. So I can even just read a book at night, so it's not late, or whatever the case may be. And I'm causing anxiety myself. I'm causing tension in the kid. And this is a skill, that they need to be learning. So for me, it's just being aware that there are things that need to ground me. So nighttime routine, for instance, I absolutely 100% always want to end my night meditating, whether that's 2 minutes or 20 minutes, and reading a book, like a physical book. So no matter what, even if there was something else, that I wanted to, get a quick workout in or watch a show, whatever the case may be, those two things always have to be there to end my night. And so I'm not over extending myself. I'm not adding pressure to them. And then throughout the day, it's the same thing. It's no, I don't get to do the same stuff that I'd like to do in the morning or when I like, now when I'm away from them all the time without being able to do everything else that needs to get done in that time. But I think the less pressure you put on yourself to get everything done, in that free moment, the better you'll be, and I think that's something that, anybody could benefit from, whether they have kids or not, but certainly, ones with kids, because then it's like, you don't get to talk about the fact that you didn't sleep well last night, you didn't get enough sleep. It's not the kid's fault. You have to you have to look at yourself. Do you sleep well at night? No. How many commercials of, mattresses and pills and meditation, you name it, to help you sleep. So you can't put that pressure on a child. But what you can do is when the child goes to sleep, what are you going to do to get yourself to bed sooner than later? And, binge watching an entire season on Netflix is not going to happen anymore in life when you're kids. So do you get to do that and still talk about that you're tired in the morning? No, you have a choice. So,
Yeah.
grounding yourself comes from that being aware of those moments again and what you want to do with those moments. I have 5 hours while they're gone at school. I have 5 million things to do. Maybe I can only do a million of those things today, and that's fine. Again, that takes a lot of practice and something you're not good at overnight, but eventually you'll realize that, those things that you did before slowly start to come back in some way, shape, or form, or not at all. You get to do them now with your kid, instead. So again, going back to those fragile moments, there's so many different things that you're going to miss out on trying to fit in life, as it evolves. It's not going to be the same. That doesn't mean bad. It just means you have to adjust, or course correct,
Wow. I could literally, I want to have this episode for 5 hours because you mentioned some really golden nuggets. I counted five. We are not going to have time to talk about all of them, but what I really appreciate is you saying that you don't need to do all of those things. I think the end goal at the end of the day would be to just feel, okay, I am at peace, I'm calm, I can do my meditation, as you said, and not just have a million things cut
Yeah.
out from your to-do list, just the feeling of accomplishment. And maybe you can have just one task per day. I am so much enjoying your relaxed attitude about life and kids and work life balance and the schedule that you have. And I wanted to ask you, how do you do life with kids and business? Because to be honest, I only have one, you have two. And it's challenging at
It
times,
is.
really challenging for me. So is there a secret?
Um, no, I think the best thing I could tell people is you have to and I'm a fan of routines. I've always been a fan of routines. My wife is the exact same way. You can see her job is far more important than mine, and she's an oncology nurse. So
Wow.
I get her anxiety when it comes to breaking from that routine. But you have to have some version of a routine. I don't care, if it's the extreme that when the first thing when I wake up, I've got to go to the bathroom and brush my teeth. It doesn't have to be this super red, but you have to have some kind of grounding routine for yourself. Nothing extreme, but something that like when things start to go haywire, it's like, okay, it's 5 o'clock around this time. That's when we should be settling for dinner. And it at least puts you back in perspective. The converse of that is if you're too stuck in it, again, you go back to, the headaches of like, sleep, for a child that, you're looking at your watch and it's like, it's 7:30. Like, this is way past, like, we need to do books. Can you go find a book, go to the bathroom real quick? And you start rushing them and you're rushing yourself in it. So that's like too far that direction of a routine. So, something to ground you, is certainly what helps balance that. But then at the same time, being able to not fall into those categories as well. And when you don't, noticing that that's a time that you need to adjust what you're doing. So having one child, that was one version of like where he is and not at school. Like he was with grandparent. Can't remember now if it was like 2 or 3 days out of the week. And then I had him the majority of the time throughout the day. And those days were, if he was taking a longer nap, I maybe had things that I could get done, but I planned what I was doing in that time. Okay, this is 2 hours. Is that going to be a time to record something or speak to a client? No. But I can do these tiny things because at the end, I'm with him. So I shut down when I'm with the kids. My phone is nearby in case anybody needs it, but I'm there for them at that point. So it's kind of watching what the days are going to bring. So I only just I only just got this new freedom of every day of the week. They're gone in some capacity from about like 9:30, and then I have to leave until I think I have like 2:30. So I have to eat twice, right? Breakfast and some kind of version of lunch. I have a dog to watch. There might be laundry that needs to be done. I like to help like clean. So there's things, like I said, that have to be done and things work wise. So I have a pretty, I wouldn't say strict, but I have a pretty regimented, like it's Tuesday. Tuesday means recording and Wednesday means, writing, Wednesday. So I have things that are going to get done, general speaking in that. And then I kind of fit the to-do list into there. So that for starters, once that's done, I can breathe. Like I'm not trying to cram in anything else. I'm not trying to squeeze it in. Um, I'm just, that's what I'm going to do today. And that's what today is about. And that's it. Are there things that fall outside of that? Sure. There might be an email or something like that. But the other trick, and I learned that when I was a teacher for 10 years, that took me long too, was to shut down at a certain point. And so what I used to do teaching, I would never bring my laptop home. I never had anything with me. And I was very conscious about closing that laptop. I'm like, okay, did you do everything that you needed to do before you walk out? And so I would check myself and close it down. And that was it. So I carry that too. And then on the weekends, the same thing. So, I mean, if you're paying attention to my social media, I don't have anything on Saturday or Sunday. I'm on vacation, this weekend. So that kind of helped it even more. But I didn't plan anything for Monday because I was still with my family on Monday. So I didn't try and like schedule ahead of time. I didn't try and like, because then I'm going to be paying attention to it. I'm going to like, okay, can I pause while I'm driving to post this? No. So that's probably the biggest trick I think is knowing when to shut down. If you want a magic trick, there's my magic trick is knowing when to shut off. Because if you don't do that, you'll be the one sitting in bed when you could be, sitting with your spouse or loved one, talking about the day or reading that book or meditating. You'll be on your laptop because you think you have to get this done now, and you don't. The world will still be there when you wake up and done. Um, so I think that's probably the one trick, but it shouldn't be, right? I mean, we should be able to go, nope, it's 5 o'clock. I'm home. My kids need me. My wife needs me. My husband needs me. My girlfriend, whatever, right? It's knowing when to stop, whatever time that is for you.
And I was not joking, my fearless friends, when I said that JD is giving me a lot of food for thought from his amazing posts and tweets. And now it's live, and I'm just
It's
so
live.
grateful. I am
I
so
wasn't kidding.
grateful for this amazing talk, JD, really, because it's so inspiring to hear that you have this great discipline, and many people have a good routine. They maybe try to keep it, they try to keep it for a few days, but then it falls out of place and they may be stopped. So can you please share with us
Yeah.
how long it took you until you got to this great discipline that I
Oh.
really admire and I need to implement some on my end?
Well, I'm 42, so it's taken me probably all those years and then some. That's the other key though is that, and I can take that from the fitness world, right? That you're like, I'm gonna go on this diet. I'm gonna cut out all my sugars, and that sounds great. That's super extreme at the same time. And what happens every time, both I can tell you from personal experience and working with clients, that your mind feels like you're a failure because you chose to cut out sugar starting at Halloween, and your work party, your kid, I don't know, had treats, and you were like, "Dang it, I love Reese's cups," and so you had one, and you're like, "Oh crap, I just let myself down, and I can never cut out sugar. Like I'm just never gonna. I'm always gonna be overweight, out of shape, whatever you think you might be." And that's not what you figured out is that you're human and you're gonna make mistakes. You should make mistakes. And you probably set the bar way too high to start with. If you've never cut anything out like that, then of course you can't do that. So it's that you have to realize that when you break from whatever you said you were going to do, whatever challenge you're going to have that routine. I am not like good at all when it comes to it. What I am good at it is realizing that nope, you set the wrong bar. Not even a goal, but the wrong expectation for yourself. Like dial it back a second. I'll go back to the fitness world. I'm a runner, or at least I used to be, and I can't do that every day. I used to. So at the beginning, like as I started to get more free time, and the kids aren't that little, and you could run with them. It's like, okay, like I'm gonna go back to running like 3 times a week. My wife was even, she's a runner too, like, find a time that's gonna work for you. And I don't mind staying, with them while you run. Like, okay, like I kind of also feel guilty leaving with them just to run, but it was just too much. And so it's like, okay, well, I didn't even work out at all this week. And so it's like, oh, hold on, go back to just a simple, like, you don't even have this, like, I'm pointing like you can see it. If this is a very expensive Peloton treadmill that both of us were like, okay, that's going to help us stay on track. And she uses it more than I do, but I set the bar too high for myself. And I haven't, well, up until like a couple of weeks ago, I hadn't used it for like a month because I told myself that I was going to do it this much, and I can't do that just yet. And here I am, somebody that worked out almost every day when I was younger. So I'm aware of that. And I think I wouldn't even call myself disciplined. So thank you for that. I'm at least aware of when I've made the mistake, and I'm okay with admitting to myself and whoever needs to hear it that I made that mistake. The minute I go back to my son, minute I don't want to say like yell, I'm not like screaming at him, but if I, start the wrong tone, or if I'm upset or angry at him, the minute I realize that I've done that, I turn right, and that's very quickly. I turn right around, or, if I'm looking at him anyway, or, I get down like to his level, and I tell him I'm sorry. Like, daddy shouldn't have got upset. I'm, upset at, something. I mean, he doesn't hear that part of it. I'm upset it was something that has nothing to do with the fact that he, whatever like wrong he actually did. Right. So it's that. And I think you have to have that grace for yourself. That doesn't mean that you're a bad person or you failed. It just means that that was not the path just yet. Step back. So I think, and that's a lot of hard work. And we're a world of wanting it quickly, and this stuff doesn't. You're not going to find an app that's going to do everything that for you. You're not going to find the pill or a book to do all of that for you. It might get your brain joggled, and that's what I hope I end up doing. So it's grateful that that's my 140 characters or whatever it is now, um, does for somebody, that it makes them go, oh yeah, I should probably think about that. And you get to go home and really decide, do you want to do that work, or not. And then you get to find the path that's okay. I want to do the work. That's step one. How do I get that work done? And I'm not going to make it, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, make it sound, simple, but what I'm good at is recognizing the mistakes that I make and being able to put in the work to readjust, and to course correct those mistakes. And I think that's where the people stop and don't want to anymore, because we're a society that, or a nation or a country or a world that wants that done fast, and that's never going to happen with the things that truly matter. You really have to take stock of those moments again. I go back to the beginning, right? And say, okay, well, I didn't fail. I hit a roadblock, but why? My son's famous question right now, why? You have to ask yourself that too. And be prepared that that wise answer might be that you have a lot more work to do and a long ways to go. But if it truly matters, you'll do it. And that's what I hope, my words, my stories, my tweets, whatever they are that hit you, do. I don't want to be the fix for somebody. Even with the work that I do with clients, I'm very upfront. I'm not here to solve all your problems. That's not my job. That's not my scope of practice. And even if it was, I would not want to be that person that's like, well, JD told me that if I do this, this, and this, I'm going to be happier. No, what I said is if you do these things, you'll be on the path to find your own. But I think that's what happens, is that, that's what we're hardwired to do. So I get it. We want to be the fix for somebody, right? When you hear somebody upset, sad, whatever, you want to tell them it's okay, or they're hurt, it'll be all right. What can I do for you? It's not what I can do for you. It's like, what can I do to help you understand it? And I think we forget that also that same grace and compassion is internal. And so if you were cutting out sugar and you had one Reese's cups, give yourself some grace that you had one Reese's cup. And I hope you enjoyed it, but that doesn't mean that you forgot how to, to be disciplined. It's going to take a little bit more extra steps. Same thing, you look at alcoholism, that how many people do you see constantly, that, well, I was 60 days sober, and I had one drink, and I guess and they spiral fast, and that's an extreme version of figuring out your discipline. And it's not like there's a whole system inside you that has been wired in a way that's making that addiction so strong that you're not going to be able to figure that out. And go back to the diet. There's a famous saying that, how long did it take you to get to this point of whatever, feeling of overweight, out of shape, whatever? It didn't happen overnight. You had a donut every day for breakfast. You didn't work out any day for the past 6 years. It's gonna take time. It's just not what you want right now. So it's the same thing for your mental state of mind. That it's not. You've been dealing with some version of anxiety, depression, addiction, you name it, for a while. So it's going to take a little bit of time and effort, and you'll find a way to manage it. Not solve it, but manage world around you differently and better each day. So yeah.
I enjoy that so much. So, my fearless friends, it really takes time. Nothing happens overnight. And yes, I love it how you said that. We want it fast, like one, two, three, but it
Doesn't
just
happen.
doesn't happen like
Yeah.
that. An overnight
No,
success takes 5 to
doesn't.
10 years, if
Yeah.
not more. So, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, JD, how do you see fear? How do you deal with it?
Mm. I I knew that was coming, right? 'Cause that's what you love to talk about. So I'm sitting there on my drive, like home. I'm like, oh, what do I answer? What do I think about that? Is right. Uh, you know, I don't know. If you had asked me like 10 years ago, I may have had a different answer, different experience of life. And I don't, think I'm like this wise old man. Hopefully I don't think I'm old. I'm not sure yet. Um, being I'm still the person that's like, can I check your ID? I'm like, yep, I am double the drinking age, but you can absolutely check that. So I already feel like I'm old in certain statements. So it doesn't matter. I don't think it matters what age and how you deal with fear. I think it has to deal with what you've gone through in life. You see traumatic events in 8-year-olds and you're like, wow, like look at how they process that and they have no idea what's going on with the world. And you have people that are 50, 60 years old that go through traumatic events and they fall apart, so you have all these different ends of the spectrum. But I think the connecting piece is what you've had to gone through in life already. And if I'm not saying you've been sheltered and then all of a sudden it hits you, but if you've never had to be around things that are, and I say traumatic very lightly, it doesn't mean you had to like witness a murder to call it traumatic. It just is something that causes you a version of distress. If you've never been around that, the first instance of it is going to hit you a lot differently. For me, though, the way I look at events like that is I compare my own life events to each other. And so here I am, stressing about something with my kids or getting even like an ounce of success, or success in my eyes, whatever that is, and I'm stressing about it, I'm not sleeping, whatever it is. I look back in all my other life moments and is this the worst thing that's ever happened to me? No. Okay. Then shut up, JD. Just slow down. And yes, this is still an uncomfortable moment, but it's not the worst thing that's happened to you. And so it causes me to kind of regulate that fear, I guess is the best way to put it. It's like, no, no. You don't get to worry about it that much. You can worry, give yourself a chance to do that. Again, giving yourself that grace, but stop. Um, you know, I've never experienced anybody like truly close to me, like a mom, a dad, brother, or whatever, passing away. I've had, aunts and uncles and grandmothers pass away when I was fairly young. And so I've seen it. I've watched the way my parents react, but it's never hit me in that way. And so I look at my wife who lost her father 10 years ago. And so here she is, she's 40. So dial that back 10 years, you're fairly, along in life to understand what that means and how to process that. And anytime I even do the same thing with that. I look at myself and go, okay, I've never anytime the anniversary comes around, I can see her presence and I can feel it that it still hits you. And so I'm not telling you like I don't look at myself or look at her and go, well, I have it way better than you. Like you're experiencing this because I haven't, but it helps me kind of regulate, like, what are you doing? Like, so you didn't get to, watch that show today. Like, what are you mad at? Or you didn't have your free time or whatever, like minuscule thing. That person went through something way tougher right now. So knock it off. So I think not necessarily comparing, because you don't really want to judge, you could end up judging somebody, but it helps me regulate my fears. And so I don't want to say that I'm like a friend of fear, but I get those statements, those quotes, that you see floating around all the time. It's like, man, you yourself say it, right? You've got to face those fears. That's my version of facing my fears is just looking back at my history. And I don't have anything like extreme, but they are to me, as to what I've, gone through. And it's like, okay, nope. Um, the fact that you're, whatever your kid, didn't fall asleep till 10 o'clock tonight. Like, is that really like the worst thing that's happened? Like, why are you upset right now? Like, it's nothing compared to what other people have gone through, let alone yourself. So knock it off. And I think that's a helpful tool. I mean, I say it very like nonchalant and like simple that I'm like, yep, got it, figured out on day one. But I probably took a lot of just, walks and journaling and just being in my own head and realizing that that's a helpful tool for me. And so again, that's what I hope when spew my story and whatever small nugget, like you said, 5 of them, hopefully maybe up to 10, I don't know. That somebody took that away and go, okay, I'm gonna try that and I'm gonna see if that works. And maybe it does, but again, be prepared that it may not. All those quick fixes sound great, but the psychology of them is make you think that they are going to work for you. And it's not that that weight loss pill or that, meditation app or whatever is terrible. It just means it didn't work for you right now. Right.
I enjoy this a lot because that's why we have a billion personal development tools, right? We have
Yeah.
just so many methods. It's about trying and testing
Right.
and see what works for you. And if
Yeah.
this works for you, JD, and I
Great.
encourage our fearless friends watching us and listening to us right now, put this in practice.
Right.
Tell us
Yeah.
how it goes for you because you never
Yes.
know. You don't know
Yeah.
what you don't know at the end of the day,
You
right?
don't know, right? And I mean, it's an example too. All these personal development tools, right? I mean, it's not that health coach, that trainer, that life coach, that mentor, whatever it is, that doctor, it's not that they're terrible at what they do. It didn't mesh with who you are. It's not
Yeah,
the
exactly.
the work you needed to hear. And you have to be okay with saying no to that person that, and maybe they are, it could be a terrible doctor for sure, but you can't jump to that first. You have to really look back and go, you know what? I don't do this wishy-washy floaty stuff. Like that sounds great, Mr. Mrs., health coach, life coach, whatever, but I think this is a bunch of hoo-ha, telling me to meditate and journal, but there's some other life coach that may also believe small parts of that is good, but they have this approach too. Fine, and that's okay. You have to be okay with that.
Whatever works for you, I think it's
Yeah,
the best method,
absolutely.
100%. And JD, I know you're offering mentoring to your clients. Can
Mhm.
you please tell everyone before we leave today? And
Yeah.
gosh, I don't
Yeah.
want this conversation to end. Where can our fearless friends get in touch with you and
Yeah.
check your amazing work and see your amazing tweets, which I so much like? How can they work with you? Please tell us
E
where to find you.
easy easy to do. I kind of lump it under one nice umbrella. So it's fragile moments.org. And you'll easily see I'm a fan of keeping things simple and not having to click through a million things or search for a bunch of things. Because I know our attention spans are very limited with the world going on around us. You'll see how to work with me. You'll see, the shows that I host, and a link to all those social medias as well. And it's really just this that I do. It's getting you to have the conversation that I'm having through guiding conversation or guiding questions. So reversing the roles, the questions you ask are things that I like to ask clients, but it's it's just getting, a sounding board. There's, a few other work pieces to do along the way, but it's that, because we don't necessarily have somebody that you can do that with. And that's nice to be able to say is in your corner versus, go see this doctor or that, specialist. That here's somebody that has that in their scope of practice can do, but it just feels more natural at the same time. And because you're more apt to just go, okay, um, that person that, I respect and seems to know what they're doing, shared this piece and I can manage that versus, you telling me that like, I've got to buy this, this, and this. And don't worry, it's going to discount it for first time client. Like, no, no, just, share what you want to do and tell them what you're going to do and just keep it at that, unless you're selling t-shirts and, some material product like that discount, like don't discount your services. Just be who you are and tell them how you're going to make them, work with them to help them make them feel eventually and let it come. So yeah, fragilemoments.org. You'll find everything and anything that I do right there.
I love it. And I love the simplicity of your life philosophy, JD, of your work. You really keep it user friendly.
Yeah,
As you said, not too many
we don't. We don't.
cute things that may sound great, but just tell
Yeah,
the person how you're going to help them. Just have a
yeah.
conversation with them. I
Just
love
needs
that. And
just needs to be simple.
yeah, I think that our brain is just so complicated that most of the
Yeah,
times, if we hear that something's very plain and simple and to the point, we think, It can't
It
work.
it
I
must
need
not work.
something. Yeah, I need something so
No,
complex and complicated. No,
no.
keep
Has
it
more chances
simple.
to break at that point, you know? I mean, I don't know about, you, but I shut down with anything that it's like, "Oh, nope."
Same.
And sometimes that shutdown is like, "Okay, I need an expert to figure this out for me because it's, something I'm installing." So that helps me in that sense. But other times it's like, "Nope, no, that's not gonna really help me at all get the work done that I need to." Or,
Yeah.
go back to these headphones. Like, I only got them because it was easier to run, but it was the newer version. It came with the computer that I had to update. It was 20 years plus old, whatever, and it wasn't functioning like it needed to. Like something was, one ear was dropping, and they're the fix as I sent it back. Like, what is wrong? And literally, the article that they sent me was all the fandangled new features that it comes with. If you had 9 million other, Apple devices, it quickly, connects to them without having to touch a button. All these fandangled things that it can do may cause it, is what they said. They don't want to admit that it does, may cause it to disconnect in one ear like it was doing for me. I'm like, no, I want to put these in and hear my stuff. What music, people, what, So it's like that, with everything is the same answer. It just needs to work.
I love
And
that.
usually,
Just keep it simple. And let me share a quick story on my end. I'm a
yeah,
neurolinguistic programming trainer. And as I was trained a few years ago on all of the NLP techniques, you know about it, you know about mental health and personal
yeah,
development as much as I do. So I'm not going to go into that. You know, there are literally hundreds of NLP techniques, and
yeah.
some are really complicated with scripts. And at one point, I experienced this with a client, and I got the really long, huge script, and they were like, what have I gotten myself into? I could feel their energy. They felt
No.
frustrated. They just wanted someone, as you
Yeah.
said, to talk to, not the
Talk to.
long. I mean, it may look nice, it may look professional, right?
Yeah.
It may look fancy, but it's not what
It's
we
not,
need.
not
We never, I
necessarily.
mean, we just don't. So
Yeah.
I love that. My fearless friends, keep it simple. Have a talk with JD. He's amazing. This is the second
Thank
conversation
you.
that we are having. I wish this episode would be longer, a few more hours, because I so appreciate how you
Oh,
truly are
thank you.
grounded,
Thank you.
calm, connected to what's happening around you. And I just cannot wait to see what you're going to create next.
Thank you. Yeah.
Fragilemoments.org is where you can find JD,
Simon.
get in touch with him, work with him, see his amazing work. Go on Twitter because he shares so much of his insights
Thank you.
there. And JD, what a pleasure to have
Thank
you
you.
on
Thank you. Thank
today.
you for
Thank
having
you
me. I
so
appreciate
much.
it.
A great pleasure.
Yeah.